Polly, oh Polly, it's for your sake alone. I left my dear old father, my country and my home. I left my dear old mother to weep and to mourn. I am a rebel soldier and far from my home. It's grape shot and musket and the cannon lumber loud. There's many a mangled body, the blanket for their shroud. There's many a mangled body left on the fields alone. I am a rebel soldier and far from my home.
Hi, this is James White from Critical Disclosure Radio here, brought to you by Northwest Liberty News. It's the 16th day of October 2020, and let me start recording this broadcast here. We're sort of in a transition phase here right now, folks. We're going to be switching over to Critical Disclosure Radio full-time. Right now, we're just trying to get the Montana Daily Gazette show launched. It's going to be launching Monday. I think we're actually broadcasting on the Montana Daily Gazette Facebook page right now. We really didn't intend to do that, but we're broadcasting there nonetheless. So tune in if you want to check out what's going on. We have a returning guest. Michael Volpe is an investigative reporter and author who is joining us today. And looking from his show notes that he sent me over here, we're just going to be a little bit of an international flair. Mike's been on the show numerous times as a guest. He has written, I think, 4, maybe 5 novels now, or books now. We're going to give him an opportunity to give those out, and his websites. He's written for a lot of big publications, been on many broadcasts, many interviews. He's an all-Renaissance man and an all-around good guy, an investigative reporter. Michael Volpe, thanks so much for joining us here on Critical Disclosure Radio. Go ahead and hit your mute. There you go, brother.
Thank you for having me.
You're quite welcome. You're quite welcome, Michael. Okay, so go ahead.
We are going to have an international flavor. We're going to try to cover a bunch of different topics. So look at a couple of international issues that have flared up recently. And then that's in the first half. And then second half of the show, we're going to do some family court stuff. So right. Mozambique and family court in the same episode. How about that?
that is quite a diverse set of topics there, Michael. So you want to probably get going right away, I'm sure, on this. Let's just hit the ground running.
Right. So the first thing that's received a little bit of attention here is there's a significant flare-up in a region between two countries, Armenia and Azerbaijan, which used to be a part of the Soviet bloc, but are no longer, called Nagorno something region. And so it's a disputed territory that's been disputed since they broke off from the Soviet Union. But right this second, there's a flare-up, both militarily and every other which way. And I think I've got the initial link. This is from a show on a station called France 24. It's called The Debates. So like 2:10 in until just after 4 minutes, she does like a quick news broadcast. But before you hit it, the debate, obviously they have a debate. So if you want to watch the whole broadcast, because we're going to, sort of steal from them, check out France 24 to debate and check out this particular episode. And then obviously what they do is those 4 folks carry on about a 40-minute debate. And it's pretty interesting how they debate things in Europe compared to the US. Nobody's cutting anybody off. They each speak for like a minute or two. And it's like a much more calm and in-depth discussion. So like just two
You mean they're polite?
Seconds
you
in.
mean they're polite, Mike? You mean they're actually polite and respectful?
Very polite.
Imagine
and
that.
by the way, the host's name is Francois Picard, and yet he speaks English better than you, I think.
Francois. I love that name. Francois.
A guy named Francois, and he's got better grasp of the English, definitely better grasp of the French language. We're not even arguing there, but I think he has a better grasp of the English language than you.
Yeah, that's probably not saying much. I mean, it's not a great accomplishment, believe me. Okay, so you want to go ahead and throw this on here? What is it? 2 minutes and 10 seconds in? It's going to take us.
She does like a little news story just after 2 minutes or so.
Okay, it's going to take me a minute. It's going to take me a second to get there. So hold on, bear with me, folks. We'll get here. 2 minutes, and you can see this, right, Mike? So you're saying 2 minutes and 10 seconds?
Yeah, no, that's a little too far.
Let's see here. 2 minutes and 10 seconds. Right, those are 2:07. Let's go here. Here we go, folks.
Hashtag F24debate. Yeah, both sides again claiming this Wednesday that civilians are under attack in Nagorno-Karabakh's largest city, Stepanakert. Evidence of more shelling, as we can see in these images. Same story on the other side of the front line. Let's take a look at the report that you, Catherine Norris-Trent, filed earlier.
A few kilometers from the front line, artillery rocks the Azeri countryside. Every day, these villagers gather to watch the battle from a hilltop. It's the same expression of national pride we hear everywhere in a country which prepares its children for war. One of the men invites us to his home, complete with a hastily built bomb shelter.
Bu bizim sığanaqda, atıb eləyəndə giririk bura, özümüzü qoruyuruq. Ailə burada, uşaq burada, anam burada, bacım burada yerləşir. Sakitləşəndə çıxırıq, gedirik evə.
That loud detonation indicates Azerbaijan's armed forces are firing from nearby. But despite the danger, some are refusing to flee, including this woman who's 97 years old. In the largest nearby town, people tell us business is bad, with many customers staying off the streets. But in this bakery, the ovens are full and the staff are working flat out.
You know, Mike, I hate to see this time in 2020, man. I just hate to see that type of war going on and that type of, a conflict and children suffering like that, man.
Right. The important thing to understand is this is also a proxy war. Turkey has aligned itself with Azerbaijan. Russia, at least outwardly, is neutral. However, obviously they're exerting their influence. This is what's called geopolitics. And then also Iran is in the same general area. They're not right next door. So if you see this, the danger is the regional instability, and that's why people should be following this. You see that flare up there, it's a region that's unstable, and there are several bad actors, Russia and Turkey, who are now going to exert their influence. And then Iran lurks in the background, and that's what people should understand. But yeah, obviously, these are very poor regions, and there's a lot of nationalism. It's not only disputed, but the dispute goes back many, many, many years. And so that's what folks should know about what's flaring up there.
Indeed, Mike. Do you want to? I've just cut the feed here from the Montana Daily Gazette Facebook page. I actually clicked the wrong one, so switch over to Critical Disclosure if you want to see it there. Mike, you want to go over to the next? You want to go to the next slide here, brother?
Right. So, secondly, so the country of Mozambique is going through its own, and that's in Africa. It's going through its own issues. And in the meantime, Islamic State is starting to get a little bit of a foothold there, similar to what they were able to do in Syria, though obviously at this point, not quite the same kind of influence yet. But Africa is an extremely unstable region. And if Islamic State ever gets a foothold there, there's a lot they can take advantage of. Just scroll through the article a little bit. And so that's first what you should know. But then I've got the next link, which will tell a little bit more of the story.
You want me to hit the next link?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is from Al Jazeera English, but there's a video, if you scroll a little bit, that they do a news story that's pretty interesting, even though it is right there. Even though it is Al Jazeera English, let's play this video, about 2.5 minutes.
Okay.
Beheadings, kidnappings and torching of homes is what these people fled. Now they live in this camp in northern Mozambique. An armed group has been attacking villages in Cabo Delgado province for nearly 3 years.
Foi 17 horas. Depois me apanharam ali.
It was about 5 in the afternoon when the attackers came and started burning houses. I ran with my wife and they shot her. They killed her in front of me. I managed to escape. They came with guns and machetes and started burning houses.
The army's been fighting back, but information is scarce. Journalists and researchers found in the conflict zone are arrested. So social media videos, like this one filmed by a soldier, are all that can be seen from outside. And it hasn't been going well for the army. This one, posted by fighters from the armed group, shows a military vehicle they captured. For 2 years, the group attacked only remote villages and said nothing. Then, 3 months ago, it started attacking and briefly occupying towns. In this message, a fighter rejects the government and calls people to fight under an ISIL flag. ISIL has claimed responsibility for some of the attacks. It's not clear if there's any real link between the groups. But it is clear there are deep local grievances. Mozambique's growing oil and gas industry is part of it. One of the world's largest natural gas reserves has been found off the coast of Cabo Delgado. Oil companies have moved in, but people have remained poor. Analysts say years of government neglect in the province have proved toxic.
It tended to move from an absent state to a state that is being seen gradually aligning with the interest of the international oil company and business, etc., and less available to protect communities, particularly the youth, etc.
The army's response hasn't always helped. Here, the soldier filming orders others to set fire to an enemy camp. Soldiers have been accused of executing any men they suspect of collaborating with the armed group. The army and the government didn't respond to our request for comment. As the violence escalates, more people flee. There's little support in the camps and a shortage of food. But it's not safe to go home. Malcolm Webb, Al Jazeera.
So, here's my analysis of that. Very complicated, am I right? Local grievances,
sure.
ISIL,
warring tribes, warlords, probably tribal. It's not tribalism, a lot of tribalism.
Some tribalism. Also, does it look like there's any good guys? Who are you going to back out of what you just saw? That is exactly the sort of situation that can be exploited by somebody like ISIL. Your government is corrupt. They're not helping you. That's how they swoop in. That's exactly what happened in Iraq. That's what we had to fight back against in Anbar province. That the Americans and all these people, they're not providing for you. We will. And that's, for a while, those Iraqis bought into that. So if the Islamic State gets a foothold in Africa, there's all sorts of countries that are fertile for them because there's instability throughout the entire continent. So just as the Middle East, which is right next door, is heading towards peace, we may be in the region right next to it at the beginning of a problem here. So that doesn't mean that we should put boots on the ground, obviously. I'm not suggesting that we step into this situation. It's a situation people should be looking at because that looks very complicated. That's exactly the kind of thing that the Islamic State would exploit. And then you heard the guy, there's some group, they're kind of with them, they're not with them. Do you see how easily they can infiltrate all of that?
And they mentioned that you mentioned Turkey earlier in the story before that. They're going sort of. I think the guy running the show there in Turkey is a little bit off the rails. I mean, Erdogan.
He's a tyrant.
Yeah, he's a tyrant for sure.
And he has been a little bit extending outside. Look, tyrants are okay geopolitically as long as it's all internal. That's called realpolitik. Guy may be a tyrant as long as he's not threatening anyone near him. That's not necessarily your problem because you can't get involved. But if this guy, he's exerting influence, he's backing Azerbaijan there. All right. He's chosen a side. They are fully behind one of the two sides. That's a proxy war. That's what they call a proxy war. Very complicated. And all of these things, it's like a stew. So on the one hand, through the Middle East, you're having peace. On the other hand, here in Europe, there might be a problem. Down there in Africa, there might be a problem. So that doesn't mean that the world is hunky-dory and everything is all right. We've got a couple of regions that people need to be looking at and make sure that it doesn't go out of control, because if it does, you could flare up a regional conflict there. Could also allow Islamic State to reconstitute, which would be a huge problem.
And what's the common denominator that you see, Mike, in a lot of these situations? What did he say? In the oil companies moved in, and then the oil companies moved in. Once the oil companies move in,
right? Well,
forget about it. Right.
Of course, oil is oil, and down in Africa, it's less oil generally, actually, than it is the jewels and the gold.
Right.
There's the movie with Leonardo DiCaprio, which captures that.
Blood money or something? Blood diamond?
Blood diamonds.
Yeah,
yes,
that's what
diamonds.
Blood diamonds.
That industry is huge, and that, though it's not a true story, it's accurate as far as like the dynamics and how they work.
But there's a whole artificial scarcity about that as well. They hold back supply on that to continue to keep the price high. I mean, that's been exposed.
Right.
This whole De Beers and all this
that
stuff
was in the
scam.
movie. They were doing that in the movie. They were.
I haven't seen that movie in a long time. Wow.
Right, but in any case, it's absolutely. It's a stew that it's not a powder keg yet, but these are significant situations that need to be looked at. And one of the issues with the media in the U.S. is we cover almost nothing outside of the country. So these things have gotten some media attention, but for in-depth coverage, you got to go to France 24, Al Jazeera English, and those kinds of stations to really get a good understanding of what's happening.
No, the foreign press certainly covers the truth. The truth about what's going on in America way more than the American press does.
I don't
there's
know
no
if
doubt
that's necessarily true, but
from my research,
does not cover the world very well. The U.S. it's internal, and so that's any questions about the globe?
Nope.
So the next link, before you get the next link, as a freelance journalist, from time to time I get some cool stuff that I do. So I was hired by a Hispanic newspaper called El Dia to cover something called Latitude, which is basically a conference that, if you're being generous, showcases the Hispanic community. If you wanted to be more cynical, you could call it akin to an infomercial for the Hispanic community.
I didn't know, Mike, that you wrote for El Dia. That's you have quite a few articles.
Yeah, I don't all the time, but from time to time I do. Hernan Curacao is the guy who runs it, but so. These are definitely not the kinds of stories that you would cover now. Now, you see the Capitol becomes a civil rights movement. Click on that article. So, first of all, what you need to understand.
I'm trying to find it. Where's the? Oh, right here. This one right here. Capitol. There it is.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
So basically, Latitude was like 4 days, and they had like session after session after session. I covered some sessions, another reporter covered other sessions. So I wrote several articles about it, short articles, but between all of them, it's a lot of work. And what was interesting about this is there is a bill in California, or not a bill, a referendum, I want to say, that's going to be on the November ballot that will allow effectively the equivalent of oh my God, I'm blanking on the term. When you favor minorities in like hiring, what is that?
Discrimination? Anti-discrimination?
No,
you mean
what's the?
You mean affirmative action?
Affirmative action, correct. So they want to bring back affirmative action. What it would do is, let's say the state has a construction project. There'd need to be a minimum of, I'll throw out a number, 15% that goes to women or that goes to minorities, and it would go throughout. And basically what they argue in the what if you're reading the Hispanic press, what they argue is there's a complete lack of diversity, and that's not without merit. For instance, I think it was the Fortune 500. There's about 2.5% of the board members are Hispanic. I think 1% of money under management by wealth management firms is managed by either women or minorities. So there's a lot of evidence that the Hispanic community is basically underutilized, and that's certainly the theme of the of Latitude. And by the way, among the people who spoke are some folks you may have heard of. Emilio Estefan. Now, you're probably familiar with his wife, Gloria. Canelo Alvarez, you've heard of him? The Mexican boxer?
I've heard of Gloria Estefan. I didn't know her husband, but no, I didn't hear that person. No.
Right. Her husband was like the producer. She was like the face of everything, but he definitely contributed a lot to her success. But and then their kids were there. Now they have kids who are singers and actors and all that. Canelo Alvarez, who's arguably the best pound for pound fighter right now, and several other people. And Joe Biden was invited to do an interview through MSNBC. But I guess if there's a takeaway, whether you think it's important or not, certainly the Hispanic community, this issue of diversity and them being undercapitalized is very important to them, and it's something that they talk about all the time. So that's what you should be aware of.
I'll tell you what, Mike, we're going to take a quick break. Looks like we're coming up here on the next part will be looks like we're moving down to family court stuff. So let's take a quick commercial break here to help pay some bills. When we get back on the other side, we'll be rejoined once again by Michael Volpe, author and investigative reporter. Michael, do you want to give out any websites or anything before we go to break?
I got 4 books: Bullied to Death, Chris Mackney's Kafka's Divorce, Prosecutors Gone Wild, The Definitive Dossier of PTSD and Whistleblowers, and Sandra Grazzini Recchi in the World's Last Custody Trial. Pick up 1 or all 4, or 2 or 3, however many you would like.
Hey, aren't you working on another one? Aren't you have?
I'm getting close. I actually completed an interview with the main another interview with the main subject yesterday.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm making progress on it.
Excellent. You've done well.
It's about another crazy family court case involving sexual molestation allegations, and one interesting thing, it's now in its 3rd jurisdiction. So they started in Queens, New York, went to Rockland County, New York, and now they're currently in Monmouth County, New Jersey. And I've written a long, in-depth expose of how corrupt Monmouth County is. I wrote a series of articles back in 2015 about how corrupt Rockland County is. Queens, I've got no evidence of any corruption there. But so, yeah, that's what I'm working on.
We got to get these people that are harming children off the streets, Mike. We got to get them off the streets and
harming of children
in prison or worse. This sexing on kids, man. It's got to stop. All right, if you go ahead and hit that mute button for me, I'd appreciate that. We'll be back here on the other side of these brief messages with our good friend Michael Volpe, author and investigative reporter, here on Critical Disclosure Radio.
PatriotPrepared.com carries the leading brands of storable food from Legacy and Heaven's Harvest. Patriot Prepared. Our name says it all. We're dedicated to empowering you to be self-reliant and confident in any circumstance. Whether you want to be prepared in the event of an emergency or you're an outdoor sports enthusiast, PatriotPrepared.com has prepackaged meals and kits for your entire family. Legacy, Heaven's Harvest are known for high-quality, great-tasting, GMO-free, nutritious food with no chemical preservatives. Simple to prepare, easy to store, gluten-free and organic high-quality nutrition options with a 25-year shelf life. You can't beat the feeling of being food secure when you need it most. So go to PatriotPrepared.com right now to pick up your supply of high-quality storable food for your family, because it makes good sense to be prepared. That's PatriotPrepared.com.
Jordan Hall's journalistic reporting has been cited in the New York Times, Newsweek, Maxim, The Today Show, the UK Daily Mail, and more. He has shaped the Christian news media for years, but has also landed in the mainstream press more times than you can count. And as a Montanan, he wants to train you, his fellow Montanans, on how to beat the liberal media at their own game. At Red Wave, Montana on October 24th, he'll host a live stream conference for Montana conservative bloggers to learn how to write to make a difference in the world. Go to redwavemontana.com.
That's right, folks, redwavemontana.com. If you want to learn how to be a conservative writer and blogger, and I know Jordan Hall personally, and I know he's written up to, I think, 17 articles in a day before. I mean, the fact that this guy can knock out, 4 or 5 articles in an hour, it's amazing. But he's going to teach that sort of that way of writing style that he has really mastered over the years. I think the course is free, actually, but check it out over at redwavemontana.com, redwavemontana.com, and you can sign up for it there. If you want to support this broadcast, you can go to northwestlibertynews.com. It's a flagship station there. You can click on the Support Independent News button and support us that way, or you can go to Patreon, become a Patreon, or go to GoFundMe, type in Support Truth and News. Or if none of that suits you, please just go ahead and hit the like button and share the video around. As you can tell by the recent censorship, a lot of YouTube channels have been taken down. Who knows? I'm probably on borrowed time as it is. I think as they get farther along, they'll probably start taking out smaller channels like mine. Who knows? We're going to continue to broadcast, though, continue to move forward until we can't any longer. And we certainly do appreciate your support. We're joined today here by Michael Volpe, investigative reporter and author of 4 and soon to be 5 books. And we always enjoy having Michael on the show here. He's been a many-time guest here. I probably interviewed Michael, I think, more than anybody now at this point. I think he's probably number 1. Rich Sheben was number 1 for a while, but I think Mike's overtaken him now. Anyway, Michael, thanks so much for being here on the broadcast. We appreciate you taking time out of your early day and being here with us once again.
You know what? If they remove this broadcast, they're going to have to explain why a news program about Mozambique and the Nagorno region and talking about Armenia and Azerbaijan and Turkey and geopolitics, why that shouldn't be put on YouTube, a platform for all voices. So,
no, I know. Well, they demonetized me about 3 or 4 months ago. Never really said. They said because of harmful, dangerous content. Never told me what the content was. Didn't even know how to fix it. They just said remove it, and you can have your your money. No, I just said fine, whatever. Right. I don't know, So a lot of great channels were taken on yesterday, man. Big channels with millions and millions of subscribers were knocked right out. So support us, folks. Support Michael and I.
Purge of QAnon, and actually it was surprising that some of those channels survived for as long as they did, because YouTube seemed to have made like an announcement that they were taking them down a while ago. But yeah, look, it's part of how powerful they are, because if there were like 5 or 6 competitors that were even close to the size of YouTube, just removing channels willy-nilly, they wouldn't be able to do it, because their competitors would say, we don't do that to you. And their competitors would quickly grow to the same size, except BitChute is, it's microscopic. Compared to YouTube. So, if BitChute was a quarter of the size, it would be one thing, but it's not. These are, the more I look at it, the more that all of this reminds me of what I know, of what I've learned of like the late 1800s with U.S. Steel and Standard Oil and those companies. And they act very similarly. They have the same kind of political influence. In fact, frankly, there's probably never been a company in the history of humankind with the kind of power, influence, breadth, and everything as Standard Oil. So, even Google and YouTube, well, Google and YouTube are the same. Even them are probably still, even though maybe not tiny compared to Standard Oil, but if you think YouTube and Facebook is powerful, you should see the kind of things that Standard Oil could do. But at this point, it's kind of the same thing, because you had to use their products, unless you wanted to live in a home with no lights and not drive a car and not have any electricity or anything. You had to use oil. And it's almost the same way with Google. Unless you don't want to search, don't want to use an email, don't want to watch videos, and in some cases don't want to browse the internet because they have a web browser too, you're going to have to use Google. So that's a monopoly. That's a very powerful company.
Well, look at Amazon. Look at Amazon. I mean, if you're rural like me, like there's some stuff that they just don't even have it around here. I mean, they just don't have it. This is not a big market, so to speak, of course, out here, 100,000 people. So I'm not going to drive 4 hours to Spokane to pick up something. I mean, how convenient is it to go to Amazon? Now, Bezos, and he owns Washington Post, and a bunch of scams and all that. But for crying out loud, I mean, there's probably, what percentage of the country has used Amazon, you think, 90?
Right. And people should know, it's complicated, but to not appreciate that part of the reason is the genius of the people who run these companies is just ignore reality. You can have plenty of issues with Jeff Bezos, but and Zuckerberg, but not recognize that they had a vision that they executed, and that's one of the main reasons why they're in the position.
Well, and plus too, in fairness, they did have some breaks. They did have some breaks. I mean, I think it's
right. No, they had. I'm not, of course, but to not, some people think that Zuckerberg is there, and it just happened, and he's no more deserving of it than they are. And I love how they do it on Facebook. They criticize him for this, and the same thing with Bezos. The first, and also, did you have any questions about Latitude or any of the other things we talked about?
We're good to go. Everything's good. Everything's
So the second half. Before I describe, I did 3 new articles that I wanted to talk about. But before that, I did a project, and I'm going to follow up with a second project where we raised money through like crowdsourcing to fund articles like the ones I do. And the reason I did it is because it's really hard to get editors to buy into these articles. And so I wanted to see if I could go directly to the public. And I did 5. I'm going to do 4 more, and we'll see how many of these I can do. So you and I talked about the first 2 the last time I was on your show, so we won't talk about those 2. But this particular article, the first and most important thing about it, not most important thing, but the first important thing about it is it happened in Kane County, which should be familiar
right.
to
you. Yes.
Kara Witkowski's
That's
county.
right.
In fact, the judge in her case, John Dalton, makes an appearance in this case. However, I didn't find that he did anything wrong.
Dalton
was on the case for just a few months. Basically, what happened in this case is that the mom had custody for a very long time. The dad used a dubious thing and did an ex parte order to switch custody, and then has continued to keep her away from her kids for over a year now. And they're now claiming that an email was harassing, I kid you not, and that should be a reason to keep the mom away from the child, even though the email was sent to the dad. And the lawyer who the dad has is a guy named John Chapsky, who is a name that you may not care about, and he's not necessarily important outside of the family law universe in Kane County, where he and his entire family, his father, who's now passed away, and his brother, Michael, and his sister, Ann, who is married to a guy named Michael Doyen, so her last name is now Doyen. They are like the first family of family law in Kane County. So they're a big deal where they are. And so basically a complete lack of due process. And by the way, in this article, the girl, Haley Luttrell, and her mom, they both described an incident where it appeared that there was ex parte communication between the judge and the lawyer.
Yeah.
So many different things. But, you first interviewed Kara. Then I did a story not just about her case, but 2 other ones in Kane County. Now her case has been covered. Now this kind of coverage does not happen. So what we're doing is brand new. And that's why these stories are important. People like the Chapskys don't get challenged. Judges don't get challenged. These rulings don't get challenged. The reason the judges do this is because they don't expect a news article challenging anything they did. And yet here we are. You and I, you live in Montana. Okay, I live in Illinois, but that's just by coincidence. Basically have done more to expose Kane County's family court system than people who cover Kane County.
Well, Mike, I did that video when Kara, I just published it, where Kara called the sheriff, and the sheriff kind of, Now I understand why they took your. Remember the end of that video, the sheriff. Now I understand why they took your kids away. People were outraged over that. Outraged. He got a bunch of they got a bunch of phone calls. Matter of fact, they sent me an email and told me to take it down, and they were going to try to bring legal action against me or something. I just kind of go ahead. Great, sure, go right ahead.
They sent you that.
They sent. They sent. They sent me a. They sent me a email response.
That I didn't know. Yeah, look, you and I have both. Now, look, in order to do this right, you'd have to continue doing articles. Obviously, Kara's case is not an anomaly in Kane County, that there are systemic issues. And by the way, here's an interesting thing about this case. So the judge was extremely biased. His name is Joe Grady. I didn't find any other evidence of like bias or corruption on his part, though he's long-term like power broker and power player. They tried to get the judge recused. That was heard by a judge named Rene Cruz, who was the head of family law in Kane County, and he took over for John Dalton after Dalton was removed from Kara's case, and he threatened to put Kara in jail for things she posted on Facebook and articles that she contributed to.
That's right.
And he
That's
did.
right.
It was that Zoom hearing was posted online, and at one point he says to Kara, I know you think you have a First Amendment right, and maybe you do, and I guess we'll find out. He was, let's say, non-committal about her First Amendment right. I'm not saying he did put her in jail or ever. It was at best a veiled threat, but that's the kind of judge he is, Rene Cruz. And by the way, this particular judge not only allowed change of custody ex parte, but is keeping the child away now from the mom over this email. And Judge Rene Cruz did not find this judge to be biased. And one last thing about the judge, he was removed from family law and lost all of his other cases, but kept himself on this case, just this case.
It reminds me, Mike, when I saw this, poor Kara, this anniversary of her precious son's coming up here, this 1 year anniversary. This is going to be a tough next couple of weeks for Kara. So pray for her, folks. If you're a prayerful person, pray for Kara. Kara Witkowski is her name. She lost her son, James. If you haven't seen the interviews, you can go right to Northwest Liberty News and look it up. Go to Mike's website. He's written articles on her. I've interviewed her half a dozen times. So yeah, check it out, folks. It's a tragic story to say the least. All right, Mike, let's move on here to looks like Joanna. We've had her on the show. Have we had her on the show? We've had Joanna. Have I had Joanna on the show or no? Have I had her on the show? I don't think so.
I don't think so, but you absolutely should.
Okay.
This is, I've never done a story exactly like, not even exactly. I've done stories kind of like this, but this was a little unique. The girl that you're seeing right now was born in England, but raised in the U.S. She was removed from her birth mom, given somehow to an American family who then moved her to the U.S., beat her, and then she wound up getting lost in the Florida foster care system. And what's crazy is I interviewed her birth mom. She found her birth mom recently. Her birth mom was raped while she was in a group home as a teenager, got pregnant. The rapist tried to continue to hit her. She was moved to another group home. The authorities, whoever that was, like social services, told her to have the baby aborted. She refused to abort the baby, had the baby. She was then in a group home for unwed mothers. It's called Beacon Lodge, which you can see, which I guess is a somewhat famous, long-standing group home of that kind. It's since been closed down. And then they take her baby, like 2 months in, so she's taking care of the baby, goes to feed her, the baby's not there. Cops show up with social services, and they say, we're taking your baby. The Greens, they take her, and they're an American family. So for some reason, an American family takes her. And by the way, this photo right here, this is the first 3 years of her life, all of the things that happened around her. You know, the first 3 years of your life, I learned to eat, learned to talk, learned to walk, right? She's like, I was moved from here to here, sent to the Greens, moved to the U.S., et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So after Florida foster care determined that the Greens were beating her, she was removed from their care, even though they had adopted her. And then she was placed into the foster care system, and they could never find her a permanent home. How's that for jacking up somebody's life?
They're supposed to be bringing families together and protecting children. I'm aghast at what you're saying.
Right.
I mean,
but it also sounds pretty international, doesn't it?
Well, yeah.
And by the way, here's something interesting. So I reached out to CAFCAS. CASS, that's their version of Child Protective Services. And they said, we've only been around since 2001. This all started in the late 80s. Joanna was born in 89. So it's very difficult to even confirm any of this stuff because it's a whole new agency. But I've been contacted by other folks, like Neil Sutz.
Yeah.
These kinds of international stories, and Joanna now, they're a lot more common than you think they are. And that might be the next frontier that I explore, that I hope to bring to your show as well. And one other woman, I think her name is Natalia Poliskaya. She's an American who had her kids taken by Norway's Child Protective Services.
Man, that name sounds so familiar. I interviewed someone out.
There is a story of an American family who had their kids taken by Norway Child Protective Services.
I interviewed someone like that. Michael.
Might have interviewed her.
I think I did. Sounded familiar when you said it.
Right. So let's get the last story. That's number 5. Tarrant County. This is near Dallas-Fort Worth. Now, Dallas has its own county, Dallas County. So near, right next door. Well, very corrupt. That judge, her name is Judith Wells. She is currently forcing a child, the son of Brad Lamb, to live with his rapist, the child's rapist. This child has made so many disclosures, it'll make your head spin. And despite all of that, the judge is insisting that he lives with the rapist. That would be either the mom's new boyfriend or maybe that guy's son. And that's just one example of a lot of corruption by Judge Wells, other judges. One notorious case that you see here, scroll down just a little bit. A judge in 2018, right here. No, hold on. Go up a little bit. Keep going. A little bit more. So the judge's name is George Gallagher. He used electroshocks on a defendant, Terry Lee Morris, while the defendant was sitting and being tried for solicitation.
What?
How's that?
Come on. Are you what?
I kid you not. It became the subject of here's part Tarrant. Here, this is from the Dallas News.
Tarrant County judge told the bailiff to shock Morris 3 times when he didn't answer the judge? Are you kidding me? How come this isn't broadcast everywhere? They're electroshocking people in court to answer. What about you're not supposed to answer? What about the Fifth Amendment? What about your right to speak?
It was in the Washington Post and other places. It is well known. That's how I knew about it. Yeah, no, that's Tarrant County. There's a judge named Baca Bennett is her last name. And she basically took jurisdiction of a case. And by the way, here's another one. This Judge Mike Sinna, let me read what he said on tape in 2016. I have a lot of liberty and a lot of discretion as a district court judge when it comes to families. The family code is fair, and the district judge has an opportunity to do things that are constitutional and unconstitutional.
Come on, is that from The Onion? Is that from the Babylon Bee, dude?
This is all Tarrant County. That's the crazy thing. So here's another thing they do. There's something, you remember habeas corpus?
Yeah, of course.
So
yeah,
they
of course.
use that in family court. Let's say like you, Jim, were supposed to see your kids on Saturday and you didn't. So on Monday you can file like a habeas corpus petition to produce the kids. Well, that's all you're supposed to do, and you're not supposed to switch custody there. Well, what they do in Tarrant County, what they like to do, a technique that I was told is they only one side finds out about these habeas corpus hearings, and then they switch custody because the other side isn't there. And then they also like to play with temporary orders. What they'll do is they'll make temporary orders and they'll make them go so long. And the reason they do that is because you can't appeal temporary orders. So you have not just corrupt judges, but judges that are basically drunk on power every which way in this county.
Yeah, man. Not just this county, Mike. This is not just this county.
But specifically in Tarrant County, that was what I focused on in that particular article. Brad Lamb is a case that's unfolding right now. Sarah Leva is a case that's unfolding right now. She's a woman who lives in Virginia, and this Judge Bennett decided that somehow Texas should have jurisdiction, Tarrant County specifically, and then she switched custody for arbitrary and capricious reasons. And now she doesn't see her children, and she's afraid she's going to be arrested if she shows up in Tarrant County. These are the kinds of things that are happening. I think we got time for me to explain one last case.
Sure, go ahead.
Out of the article. Charity Long, she was a forced into duty foster parent, the birth parents of the child she's now taking care of. The father was caught in some sort of sting and went to jail for some sort of drug-related thing. The mother tested positive repeatedly, or at least once or more than once, for drugs. They both lost custody. They're both going through termination of parental rights. In the meantime, the grandparents are trying to get custody, and Charity doesn't want the grandparents to see him. And one reason the grandparents didn't get custody is because they're unfit. And the judge, Judith Wells, the same one keeping Brad Lamb's child in the hands of an abuser, ordered her to give custody to the grandparents, even though their children, this is the father's parents, were losing their parental rights, and has now sentenced her to 10 days in jail that she served in September because Charity refused. How's that?
Well, just, Mike, all this stuff just highlights a bigger issue, man. I mean, as you know, the families have been destroyed. They need to be repaired. Families in this country have been purposefully separated. Families have been separated. Divorce rate has been ramped up. I think a lot of this has been happening by design, so things like CPS can proliferate and can continue to take more children. That's just my thoughts on things, but I'm an old-time conspiracy theorist, so take it for that.
Those 3 are part of a batch of 5. I'm now doing 4 more. Can I give you a quick preview on some of the articles?
Give me a quick preview, yes,
sir.
So
if you're working with me, the Rucky case becomes a very important case. So so far, I got a great question for you.
Yes.
How many benefits have you found of COVID? Not just the virus, but everything that's happened as a result of the virus. Like, how many positive things can you think of that have happened as a result of it?
The money that they send into your check, that's the one thing I can think of, about $1,200 and $500 for child. $1,200 and $500 for child. Isn't that it? Is that about the only thing that came out of it? And then businesses could get, like, I guess, no interest loans, but other than that, I can't see much of all that's turned out good. A lot of things have failed.
I couldn't find. I'll agree. I did get a check, so that was good. But I couldn't find any benefit. But more recently, I have found one.
Yes.
Now hearings and other things have to go online.
Yeah.
And they're done through Zoom, and they're put on YouTube.
Good stuff.
So Michelle McDonald, who was the long-term attorney and my co-author on Sandra Grazzini Rucky and the World's Last, for full disclosure, my co-author on Sandra Grazzini Rucky and the World's Last Custody Trial, was there attempting to discipline her, the Minnesota bar. Now, normally this would be done behind closed doors and I wouldn't know anything, but they streamed it live, 7 hours. Crazy stuff. Number one, she charged the client $550. And it may have been that she was only allowed to charge him $500. That's pretty big, right? Definitely need to lose your license. She did an interview and mentioned the judge's name, David Knutson, a couple times, and he got all bent out of shape. So he reported her to the bar, and now the bar is saying you may have besmirched him and done things that apparently she's not allowed to do, even though it was part of an interview and she was running for office. She sued a guy named Michael Broadcorp. She believes she was being defamed. Broadcorp didn't. The bar is claiming that not only was it a bad lawsuit, but it was frivolous, that she didn't take the time to learn any part of it. And by the way, one of the issues is that he found and it's very unflattering, a very unflattering photo of her that he calls a mugshot. And she said it's not a mugshot because I was never booked. And he claims that the police told him it was a mugshot, even though it doesn't look like a mugshot in any way. And during the hearing, the prosecutor lady, the lady representing the bar, at one point goes, I know it's your opinion, Miss McDonald, that you weren't booked. Now, Jim, have you ever been booked by the police?
In fact, I have, Mike, way, way back when I was young.
Right. I know it's your opinion you were booked, but I don't think that's correct. Now, does that sound like a good argument?
No.
Because you would know if you were booked.
I would know if I was booked, yes. And it was nothing serious, folks, believe me.
So, for some reason, the Minnesota bar is saying that it's only Michelle McDonald's opinion she wasn't booked. because she's saying it's defamatory that you said it was a mugshot since I was never booked, so I couldn't have a mugshot. But that's how ridiculous they are. And by the way, Michelle's been practicing law for now nearly 40 years. She had no problems until 2013. Since 2013, when she started representing Sandra Grazzini-Rucchi, she's been arrested for a DUI, even though she had exactly zero alcohol in her system. She spent 24 hours in jail. She's been suspended from the practice of law once, and now they're trying to suspend her from the practice of law a second time. Now, you think that she just suddenly forgot the rules, or do you think she's being targeted?
Yeah, you know.
Sounds like she's
being targeted to me. Mike, I apologize, dude. We just got to flee. I got another show coming up, and I got to get everything ramped up for that. Okay. It's always great to have you here, man. Go ahead and want to give out your websites and your books titles one more time before we have to end the broadcast.
Prosecutors Gone Wild, Bullied to Death, The Definitive Dossier of PTSD and Whistleblowers, and Sandra Grazzini-Rucchi in the World's Last Custody Trial. There
you go, folks. Michael Volpe, one of the good guys here in this whole fight, and check him out, support him and his work. We always enjoy having him here on the broadcast. Michael, always great to have you here, man. Thanks so much for being here today, and we look forward to speaking to you next time.
All right,
thanks, man. Take care, bro. Okay, folks, there goes Michael Volpe, and we are just out of time. I got to get ramped up for the next show here coming up in, looks like 9 minutes now. And we'll be back here in just after this break and after I reset this software. So we'll see you here back in a few minutes. Until then, this is James White from Northwest Liberty News and Critical Disclosure Radio saying bye now.